Your hair looks fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you. It's styled today. I can actually be okay with it being down. Usually I don't like it touching my face, but this is nice.
Yeah. Well, I can tell they kind of curled the bottoms too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the beach wave.
Oh, is that what that
Hmm.
style's called? The beach
That's
wave.
what that's what my stylist called it.
That is definitely not what my hair looks like at the beach.
That's true.
It's a
Actually, that's a
distinct
really
look.
good point. Why, whose hair looks like this at the beach?
I don't know. Maybe yours will.
Maybe.
Uh,
It's good to see you as always.
I know. So good to see you too, Janelle.
What's been on your mind?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about presence, and since
Hmm.
becoming an entrepreneur and having my
Mhm.
own schedule, really getting more intentional with my calendar. And I know you've been writing about this too in your
Mhm.
newsletters. And one of the things that I was thinking about today is this like creating the conditions for presence and how I intentionally schedule 30 minutes between each one of my
Mm.
coaching calls and even our call too. I'll schedule some time so that I can process this call, write down anything that's a takeaway that I need to remember for next time. And then, yeah, be fully present for my next call. And I
Mm.
just remember, like, in the corporate space, I would try to do that as well, have these buffers. 30 minutes is kind of a luxury, but at least 10 or 15
Mhm.
minutes, just so that I wouldn't bring like a one-on-one conversation over to the next one, or, just be fully present with whoever I'm interacting with. So that's kind of what's been on my mind the last couple of days. How about you?
Mm. Well, I love that. I kind of want to talk about that a little bit more. Because I think, it's in some ways it's almost like a buzzword or a fad to be present, and I think society's been talking about that for a while. And I'm curious, because I think of you as like a mindfulness expert in some ways. I'm curious for you when you say being present, or when you talk about presence, um, what does that look like for you? What does it mean for you to
Hmm.
be present? And why is that important?
Well, I feel like the greatest gift I can give someone is my full attention, is my presence. So if you and I were talking right now and I was like, looking over here, maybe a text coming in, I mean, I usually shut everything down so that I'm not distracted. So that's one of the ways in which I will make sure that I can stay focused, is that I'm not getting pings or, you know, other distractions that are going to pull me out of the conversation. So, yeah, for me, it's really about giving the person who's right in front of me my fullest attention. And I
Mm,
remember Deepak would talk about this at his events where he was like, the people who you are with right now, and most of the time people were traveling alone, so they weren't with their partners or their children. And he would say, those are the people who are the most important people in your life right now, because that's all we
mm,
have is this moment. So whoever is with
wow.
you right now is the most important person. And so that really stuck with me. And I've had the opposite experience so many times where, I am having a meeting with somebody and they're not present. And I
Mm.
can tell.
And you're clearly not the most important person for them right
Exactly.
then. Yeah, and how that
Yeah.
makes you feel.
Exactly. And
Hmm.
I will usually call that person out. I'll be like, hey, this
Hmm.
doesn't seem to be the right time for us to connect right now. It seems like you're distracted.
I'm sensing, I'm sensing
Right.
you're somewhere else right now.
Exactly. So that's what it looks like for me. What about for you?
Well, gosh, well, what I love is that you're saying, I agree with this. I don't know if I would have articulated it, but the way you said that it's the greatest gift that you can
Mm,
give someone, because I think for a long time, I approached presence and being present as something for me, which it can be. in some ways. And I think it's really beautiful to be aware of the gift it is for someone else. If you're with someone else,
Mm-hmm.
particularly if you're with another being, that giving them your full attention is a really, really great gift. I really, really like that. And I don't know that I've thought of it that way, although I have as a manager. To when you talked about the corporate world, I think back of times when I was a people manager and I would have a meeting with an employee. It was really important for me to be fully present for them and to give them my full attention. And the way I would do that is similar to you. I would try to always have a buffer before so that I could um, put aside anything that was on my mind before going into the meeting. And then also like reframe myself of like, where am I now? Like reposition like my GPS, be like, okay, I'm with this person. This is what we might be discussing. This is the purpose of this meeting. And then I make sure that I stay, fully attentive to them. And so I think I was naturally doing it as a gift to them because their time is important and I am there to support them. So I was thinking of it as a gift and selfishly, it's so that I made sure I had my takeaways and I didn't miss something too.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that after a meeting, you'll process the meeting and write down your actions or your takeaways. That's what I would do too. And I purposely actually started doing this. I used to take a lot of notes in one-on-ones, and I would also sometimes tell someone, I was like, okay, especially in a video call, if they didn't see my notebook, I would say, oh, I'm just going to be taking a lot of notes. So when I'm looking down, I'm just taking notes because I didn't want
Mm-hmm.
someone thinking I wasn't paying attention. So I used to take a lot of notes, but what I realized was I would get into this almost robotic process of just listening and putting it down instead of
Mm-hmm.
actually really listening. I mean, I was like hearing and putting it down. So what I started to do the last couple years of being a manager is I didn't take any notes during the meeting because it forced me to pay really close attention so that I could remember and recall. So I would really think about what they were saying because I knew right after the call I was going to write down the key points and key takeaways.
Mm-hmm.
So it really forced me to process what they were saying instead of just rotely transcribe, basically. I was
Right.
transcribing a lot. But yeah, I think in that setting, I was offering presence as a gift. And I think in a lot of other settings, I was desiring to be present for myself, like to take stuff in, to take
Mm-hmm.
in my experience so that I would appreciate it and find the gratitude in it, which is, I think, not necessarily a bad way to approach it, but I
Yeah.
do think it being almost in service of the other person is a really beautiful way to approach it and a beautiful reason to be present. When I think of my
Mm.
kids as an example,
Mm-hmm.
I do think the greatest gift I can give my kids is my own presence as opposed to anything bought for them.
Absolutely. I
Hmm.
love how you talked about it as a benefit for yourself too, because it really does calm that nervous system down. It does
Hmm.
activate your parasympathetic nervous system when you're focused on one thing rather than if you and I were talking right now, we were trying to multitask and do multiple things at one time, which would
Yeah.
elevate our heart rate and all
Yeah.
of this. And so it would just start to tap into that stress response.
Hmm.
But, as somebody who's worked with you for many years as a peer and as you being my manager, I have only experienced you in presence. Like
Mm.
when we would have one-on-ones, it's very rare that your manager is like punctual pretty much consistently. Right? Usually I would wait for my manager. And then with you, it would be so cool to be like, oh, Janelle's here, right on time. Amazing.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
if you think about it, the reason I was able to do that is because I scheduled the buffer in between meetings. Like, so that was the benefit of doing that. Like, I did it to reground myself and to have space to be prepared for my next meeting and fully present for my
Hmm.
next meeting. The benefit of it is I was always on time instead
Yeah.
of like so many people, they schedule themselves back to back to back with this lofty goal of being ending every meeting on time, which, as we know, doesn't always happen. And
Hmm.
as soon as one meeting goes late, you're behind and you're running. And then maybe the next one goes late because you're trying to give people the full amount of time. And that's just a real stressful state to be in. And it's really hard to be fully present when you're in that stress state of being late for things and not
Yeah.
being able to process and whatnot. So I think one of the best things a person can do to be a better leader is to set boundaries around their calendar and their schedule,
Hmm.
to create the space so that they can be their best selves, be there for others, be fully present, and make sure that they don't lose track of the action items and the tasks that come out of meetings. Um, like so many people, I think, feel it's almost whether it's a badge of honor or what to have a full schedule, but I just think it's really a bad idea to have a full schedule. I was going to say it's real stupid, which is
It
kind of
is.
harsh, but in reality, I think it is stupid
Well,
to let your schedule get so jam packed because you can't be an effective leader in that
I
way.
know. I think if you're a new manager, okay, maybe you're going to succumb to saying yes to every single meeting invite, right?
Yes.
And not
Yes.
question the invitation. But
Hmm.
I think if you've been a manager for a while, I'm like, get your shit together. Okay. Like, no,
Right.
I'm not waiting 10 minutes recurring. Like every
Hmm.
week, you're coming in 10, 15 minutes late, bringing in the conversation of your previous meeting because you
Yep.
haven't had time to process or even go to the bathroom.
Oh, yes.
And so they
Yes.
show up as a victim,
Hmm.
but they're in that position of power, right?
Hmm.
As the
Yeah.
leader of the team or your leader. And it's like I start to question, am I here in service of you or are you here in service of me? Because it doesn't feel
Yes.
like it's this kind of coach-like approach of
Hmm.
being there as we know, how to be effective leaders.
Yep. Yep. I when you said they show up as a victim, that is a real trigger for me when I see that behavior. When I see someone that just doesn't take responsibility, like they're blaming something as simple as they're blaming their calendar, right? Like they'll
Hmm.
say, "Oh, my calendar is just so full and I haven't had time to go to the bath, haven't had time to eat today." And in my mind, especially when they're a senior leader, I'm like, you're telling me that invites or the calendar is more powerful than you. Like you have the power to set your schedule. You have the power to say no, to say I want to end this meeting on time, like and
Yeah.
just to like stop the meeting. Like if you're the most senior person in the room and there's 5 minutes left in a meeting and you notice that and you have the power to say, we only have 5 minutes left. What is the last
Hmm.
thing we want to talk about? And just make sure it ends on time. So if your meeting is going late, I have no one to blame but you. Honestly, you're not a
Exactly.
victim. No one
I
is
know.
forcing you. And if you are a victim, then are you really a leader? If you're
Yeah.
just following along.
That is such a great question. Yeah. If you're a
Hmm.
victim, are you really a leader? I love that.
Hmm.
I mean, we throw this term fearless. Well, I don't, but I remember in the corporate space, people would be introduced like our fearless leader. I'm like,
Oh,
mm-mm,
yeah.
no. Let's unpack. this
I
word right now for one
I
moment.
vividly remember a point. I wasn't when I was working with you, so this occurs elsewhere too. But I remember someone being introduced as a fearless leader, and I think I chuckled to myself. Like, first of all, clearly they're just trying to kiss their butt because nobody would describe that person as fearless. Like, what are you saying? What are you doing?
Exactly.
It's so
If they
silly.
can't say no to a meeting invite
Yeah.
or shut a meeting down on time,
Yeah.
there's fear there.
Oh
Oh
my
gosh.
goodness.
Well, yeah, I wonder if we want to go into this fear a little bit, or is that too deep?
Yeah. Never. Never too deep. Yeah, let's go there. Where do you want to go?
Okay, I wonder if, in terms of this fear, so oftentimes, the underlining theme, especially with all of us, I think, is self-worth or lack of self-worth.
Mm, hmm.
So when I look at my coaching clients or, even working with other leaders as well, it's like, am I worthy? Do I deserve this position? There's a little bit
Mm,
of that imposter syndrome that can come up for anyone. And it's, I think, part of the human experience. And so not being able to, set those boundaries, even
yeah.
when it's your manager who's putting that invite in, or they're the one who's going overtime, because, it's like it's this ripple effect from the top
Hmm.
down of that sort of behavior of back to
Hmm.
back busyness and not being able to just stand up or challenge that status quo.
Hmm.
And so I just think about this fear and the work that especially leaders need to do on self-worth and also being okay. Like I remember saying to myself, I'm always going to be okay if I get fired, if I get
Yes.
let go, if I choose to leave this job.
Yeah.
Like I am not my job
Yeah.
or
Well,
my
that
role.
is the key. Actually, you went right to the answer. That was my unlock. Was
Mm,
like around 2018, I had this epiphany after when I went down to Ojai. I had this epiphany that I am not my job title. I am not the company that I work for. My worth has nothing to do with what role I have. And so I became like completely unattached to my job. And
mm,
I worked, I've worked on and off since then, only because I wanted to work, but I never felt like I had to prove anything or compromise my values or compromise my priorities for work. And I was always okay if at any point the company said this isn't working, my boss said this isn't working, or I said it's not working, and we just walked away. Like I was completely fine. And I
mm-hmm,
know there's a lot of privilege in having like actual financial freedom to do that because many people will say, rightly so, I need an income. I can't
mm-hmm,
just leave without a plan. And so what I always say is, I totally get that. I've been there. So if you're starting to feel this way, then start making a plan.
yeah,
Like start getting your plan B ready and getting
mm-hmm,
something else ready. Like I always thought that people should be applying for jobs at other companies regularly, whether they actually really wanted another job or not.
mm-hmm,
I think it's good practice to put yourself out there and to see what is needed and where might your experiences be incredibly valued. Because certainly your company valued you when they hired you and they value you throughout time, but then there often comes a point where, you know, you've built up an experience and you've given to that company and they're looking for other things, but that doesn't devalue what you've already learned and already
mm-hmm,
built, and some other company could really really use it, and you could be exactly what they need because they are just breaking through to something that you've already done.
mm,
So I think sometimes people feel they have to always grow and develop with the company, but innately a company is going to be keep pushing the boundaries and they're going to be charting new territory and they're going to want someone who has already charted it, so they're going to be looking elsewhere rather than you learning as you go, and
mm-hmm.
that's okay because what you've already learned and developed could be incredibly useful somewhere else. And you won't know that unless you put yourself out there or at least take a look at what other companies might need. So when you free yourself from this pressure to keep impressing your current company and keep growing within your current company and within the current set of senior leaders at your company, um, yeah, then you start doing things against your values because
Mhm.
you're holding on and you're just trying to hold on. So I just think it's if you can get to a place where you're not attached to the company, um, wanting to keep you, or I know that sounds awful, but if you're just not afraid,
Mhm.
then you can really design a life that you want, and design your day so that you have space in your day and you can say no unapologetically. You can say no even to a senior leader. You can say, I'm not available.
Mhm.
Like, just because someone is 3 levels above you does not necessarily mean that you need to bend over backwards to accommodate. If something doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. And
Mhm.
you don't have to explain, in my
Mhm.
opinion.
That's such a refreshing tip to continue looking for other jobs. Even
Mhm.
even when you're working and you're happy
Yeah.
within the company, just I think that practice alone will create some of that
Yeah.
detachment.
Yes.
And I think,
Exactly.
when I say detachment, because I feel like people often think detachment equals don't care.
Mm.
Like, oh, I don't care about this anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's absolutely not the case. It's
No,
like, oh,
no.
absolutely, I still care. And I'm putting my attention and presence and full-time energy into this.
Hmm.
But if the company changes direction,
My worth isn't tied
tied
to that.
to that.
Yep. Exactly. That's exactly how I see it too.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um,
I want to know what the unlock was for you in 2018 in Ojai. What was the unlock?
so when I went
I'm
to
not my job.
Ojai, I had to, I was there for 28 days in a really intense program that examined my thoughts to
Mm,
release suffering that was attached to my thoughts. And because we spent every single day questioning our thoughts, I had to question like the beliefs and the thoughts that I had that um, my worth is tied to being a leader in a company, or
hmm.
these thoughts that I needed to be successful and success looks like this. So I was challenging my beliefs and my thoughts around success, self-worth, all these things. And you quickly realize how untrue these beliefs are. And so that's where this, whether it's unattachment or it's really just like separating job from who I am,
Hmm.
separating title, because I used to be pretty title driven. Like, I used to think in my mind, okay, by this year, I want to be a director. And that's so arbitrary, like, because, titles can be so different at different companies. And what does it mean to be a director? Like, to me, it just meant progress and growth and more
Hmm.
money, which to me, more money meant more freedom, which again, when I started questioning those beliefs and thinking of all the ways in which that statement wasn't true, like, oh, freedom is this and freedom is that, and my self-worth is this, and a successful career will make me happy. Oh, actually, I'm happy doing this. I'm happy when I'm doing this. So I had to start recognizing where my thoughts and beliefs were not true and find other statements that were true, and then that's where the freedom was. And that's where I realized things like the point of life is not to work.
Mm,
Like, there's life, and there's a lot of things that I think humans are naturally like drawn to do in their life. And for me, what I realized is work is just a means. It's a way to have connections with people, to do something good for the world, to bring in an income
hmm.
that brings freedom in different ways. But there's a lot of ways to bring in an income. And so
Yeah.
for me, it was really about recognizing that there are a lot of different ways. And
Mm.
if you know, I really you know, wanted to approach any company specifically as I admire this company. I'm happy to support this company while I'm working there. And I'm not like it's not a family that I have to stay with. I'm
Right.
not obligated. I don't owe this company my loyalty. I
Yeah.
don't owe this company late nights and
Right.
weekends.
Mm-hmm.
So I can work in a lot of places. There are a lot of great companies and there are a lot of great people to work with.
That's so true. Yeah, it is
Mhm.
not your family.
No.
Isn't it interesting though that there is a persona that like once you do enter a company, I do
Yeah.
think that there is that family dynamic that kind of
Hmm.
becomes um like if you start to look at it, you're like, oh, this person is sort of like the matriarch.
Yeah.
This is like the patriarchy over here.
Yes,
Uh,
totally. Yep. Yep.
yeah.
And then that's where I see some really toxic culture where, I worked somewhere where someone left for a different really great job. And someone on the team took it so personally and so awfully, like was so
Hmm.
mean to that person, like as if they're personally harming them by leaving
Yeah.
them. And I
Yeah.
just was so shocked by the response because I honestly couldn't fathom it. I couldn't fathom why this person was so upset, wouldn't even talk to the person because
Yeah.
they were so upset that they were leaving the company. And I thought, wow, what do you
Like,
think the
you need to
company
start
is?
applying
Like,
for other jobs.
yeah, exactly.
This is an unhealthy attachment here.
It's a very unhealthy attachment.
I know. Well, going back, I love this, Janelle. Going back to if you have a manager
Mm.
who's not giving, like who's showing up as a victim,
Mm-hmm.
what would you do? So if your manager was showing up as a
Yeah.
victim once in a while, that's okay. Like,
Yeah. 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 Exactly.
right? I mean, we have our ups and downs, and so it's not like I'm expecting this sort of like you need to be here all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like they can totally let their hair down and have a cry or whatever it is.
Yes.
But like if it's on a consistent basis where you're just feeling like they are not valuing your time
Mm-hmm.
as a person on their team
Yeah.
and you're having to hold space for them
Mm-hmm.
and they are in that position of power, right? The
Mm-hmm.
leader, like as the direct report, for lack of a better phrase right now, what
Yeah.
advice would you give that direct report?
Yeah. You do bring up a good point that there's situational leadership. So there are times where you want to show empathy or compassion for that leader who maybe is really coming from something really difficult, a difficult conversation, a difficult meeting, a lot of frustration because we are all human and we shouldn't expect leaders to be perfect. But what I would say is because I've had a leader back in my Nike days that I felt that this manager did play victim quite a bit and also was brought a lot of stress to the team
Mm.
because of I'll say it was a man because of his response, so there was a lot of like, okay, I'll use a very specific example. Oftentimes he would be in a one-on-one with his manager. My team and I would be at our desks in our cubicles just working away. And almost every single time when he would come out of a one-on-one with his manager, he would pull us together and download all of these like fires to put out. Okay. So we're in the middle of work, we're in the middle of flow. He's just had a one-on-one and he comes in and is just like, we're changing direction in this, and this, and this. And a lot of times what I learned over time was when he was in a one-on-one, a lot of times his manager didn't really mean for him to go and like change everything right away.
Hmm.
Like it might have been a consideration to consider, but he would always take it like word for word and like we have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would always bite us because we would change and then we'd have to change back. And, then, or maybe he would say, we need to ideate on something. I want you all to work on three options so that we can present back three.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always like, because I hate the idea of presenting three options, I was always like, can you just clarify what they want us to solve and we will tell them the best option to solve?
Mm.
Because it's a lot
Yeah.
of work to provide three options when in reality, we'll have one that we prefer and that we would recommend as being
Mm-hmm.
closest to the work. We know what is the best option. So why don't you just tell us what to solve and we will work on one option because it's a lot of work to create three. And then it
Mm-hmm.
also creates indecision because you give them too many options too.
Yeah.
Can't decide. So let us actually just put forward one. But anyway, all that to say is I tolerated this like dysfunction for
Mm-hmm.
about 3 weeks as a new employee on the team.
Good for you. Wow.
About 3 weeks when it just was not effective or efficient for any of us. We were all working really long hours because things just kept changing and we had these urgent things that we needed to present the next morning, as an
Mm.
example. And so I finally, in one of my one-on-ones, and thankfully he was a very caring manager. And so he was like legitimately wondering, how do I like the team? How do I like the work? And he made me feel safe to say,
Mm-hmm.
I don't love it. I think I said like, well, it's different than I expected, is how I started. And he's like, really? Like, what do you mean? And so then I was able to share, like, this is what I'm used to. And and then I shared like how it feels like to have things constantly urgent and
Mm-hmm.
constantly changing. And I said, this is what would help me so that I can, one, just make sure I'm working on the right thing and putting
Mm-hmm.
effort on the right work, but also giving you my best work. Is if, maybe instead of coming to my desk throughout the day and then like downloading something on me, just wait until we have a one-on-one or schedule time so that
Mm-hmm.
I can wrap up what I'm working on and I can be like fully present for you and also of the mindset to like take in because when you come to my desk while I'm working, um, I just don't have like the capacity to switch gears and to take it in and then still think about what I still need to wrap up on that email I was working on or that spreadsheet that I had
Mm-hmm.
open. So I just painted a picture of why this is not working for me. And to be honest, I feel like that's how he worked. Like his leaders were acting that way or leading in that way for him. So he was managing it, but that's not my problem. Just because he's managing that and
I
working
know.
in that way and working really long hours doesn't mean I'm going to. So I just had to tell him like I can't, I'm not going to keep working like this. This is what I need.
Hmm. Good for
Yeah.
you. I mean, to just be there. I know 3 weeks when you're in it, it feels like a long time, but
Yeah,
people,
exactly. It felt like a really, really long time. And which
yeah.
which was a red flag to me that I was like, whoa, I've only been here 3 weeks. I feel like it's been ages.
Well,
I think I
it can,
aged a year in that 3 weeks.
oh my gosh. I feel like it goes back to just creating space. Like if
Hmm.
this manager took a moment, just like take a beat before
Yeah.
you just go straight to your team and react
Yes.
unconsciously.
Yes.
And if he just like took maybe an hour or
Yeah.
24
Yeah.
to just process, like, okay, how important is this?
Yeah.
And should I challenge my manager before I take it to my team?
That's exactly. So what I actually think was part of the problem was he wasn't a very good leader. So what he was an order taker.
Oh,
So I believe because I saw it when we would be in meetings with more senior people, he never questioned. things
Mm,
coming. He would take it down and then he would disperse it. And what teams need is leaders to question, clarify, prioritize. So we had no prioritization coming to us. We just had a download of a whole bunch of things that
hmm
were like whack-a-mole, solving a million different fires. When in reality, what we needed was a leader to say, okay, this is what my team is working on. These are our priorities right now. We can push that out to Q3. We can do this right now and we can do this. But it was just like order taking and dumping, which is not
hmm
a leader. That's not a
No,
leader.
no.
So really, he was just lacking leadership skills. And then it turned into just like overstepping our boundaries and not respecting our boundaries because he was just trying to solve everything
hmm
without any rhyme or reason,
Yeah, yeah.
no prioritization whatsoever.
So it sounds like he did take your feedback. Was it,
Mhm.
well, he heard it,
Yes.
and did he action it?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There was a shift.
Oh, great.
Mhm. There was a shift. There would be reverse, like he would revert back at times. But it was easy because we'd already had the conversation. It was easy to
hmm
say, "Hey, do you see what we're doing here? Like this is getting unhealthy again."
We're going back to the old ways.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was a work in progress, for sure. And he really wanted to be a good leader.
Yeah.
So at least like that was great. Like he was
hmm
receptive to it. But when people are stressed out, they just revert to what they know. It's hard.
Yeah.
I think it's hard. And to be honest, I think what he really just needed was really good leadership development, which he
hmm
wasn't getting because
Well,
he
it
was
sounds like he got some
busy.
from you, though.
Yeah, maybe. I do
Yeah.
often sometimes wonder whatever happened to him. Yeah, I
Mm,
don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I think about when that's happened to me too, where I have the manager who's shifted into victim.
Hmm.
It's I don't always do this. I mean, sometimes I am just like, oh, okay, time to update my LinkedIn profile. So there's that
Yes.
response.
Yes.
Um, but when I do really care about that person and our relationship, and I'm not like out the door,
Hmm.
then I will be in that honest conversation and be the leader. And I'm kind of thinking, you know, I think maybe that's a regret. It's like I actually should be that, or I could choose to be that leader, regardless if I feel like
Hmm.
I'm going to have a continued relationship with this manager.
Yes.
Because I would do that for somebody on my team. I would
Yes.
absolutely be in that honest conversation
Just
and
anyone you
development.
care about, really.
Exactly. But I think like as a manager, I'm like, you should know better,
Yes.
right?
I
There's
don't know if
that
you,
comes in.
I don't know if you remember the offside in Tofino.
Yes. Yes,
Senior
vaguely.
senior leader offsite.
Mm-hmm.
And a senior leader on one of the first day just behaved in a way that wasn't leader like. And I let it slide. And I was the VP of leadership and development at the time at the company that we were at. And I was helping facilitate this offsite. And it was one of those things that at the end of the day, after the day, it was eating me up inside
Mm-hmm.
because I think of all these moments as teaching moments. And
Mm-hmm.
when I really care about a person or an organization or an outcome, for me, it's important to always be a teacher when I can be, if I think that it's going to help, and or to share my perspective on something and whatnot. But when I'm thinking about this topic of um, sharing feedback to a more senior person
Mm-hmm.
specifically, and putting yourself out there, and it's very risky, maybe.
This is when
But
you can really see the actual fearless leaders,
yes.
right? When they can challenge.
Yes. So I don't know if you remember, but the next day, I mean, I think I gave you a heads up, like, I'm going to circle back on that just so you know.
I
And so
do remember.
I did, and I just started off by saying, because it was a group, it was a full group, but it was
Right.
directed to one specific senior leader. And I said, you know, there was a moment yesterday where this happened, this occurred, and this person said this. And you know, that was there was a teaching moment there, and I didn't I let it pass.
Mm,
And I said, as my role, I think it's my responsibility to highlight those moments and make sure that
yeah.
that we discuss them. And so I want to go back to that. And then I said, and this is what I wanted to say to you. And so I said it all. And I would say that was a fearless moment because when I looked around into the eyes, there was shock. I think people were surprised, but there was like nodding, you know. I
Mm,
know, you know, I'm going back to this notion that sometimes people will say, like Janelle will say what everyone is thinking.
mm-hmm,
That's an example of being courageous or fearless, is saying something when you know it's the right thing to say, and
mm-hmm,
knowing that probably a lot of people want to say it, but not everyone can or feels comfortable saying it. So it was a big moment. Like for me personally, it was a big growth moment. Um, I absolutely knew that there could be repercussions. And I wasn't afraid of them because I
mm-hmm,
thought it was the right thing to do. And I knew that everyone in that room would walk away learning something.
mm-hmm.
And that was the point of it, was to learn so that we don't repeat those things, and that
Right.
that we behave differently in the future, and we
Mm-hmm.
treat each other differently in the future as a successful team, if we're going to be a successful team.
Yeah.
When there's dysfunction in how we're working, we have to address it, and we have to learn how to remove the dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Two things came up for me. So after we facilitated that offsite, I remember, after you had brought that up, people came up to me, the other leaders, because, it was the executive team, and
Hmm.
they came up to me and said, I am so grateful for Janelle because now I
Hmm.
feel like it's opened a door for me to have
Yes,
that conversation or to bring
exactly.
this up that I
Yep.
was sitting on.
Yep.
So there is that. And then I forgot.
No, that's okay. But
There's
that is
something
the
else I want to say
thing.
about this.
Sometimes it just requires one person to open the dialogue so that then others can, because you know, if I go back to that manager at Nike,
Mm-hmm.
when I said when the behavior started to come back, I can say, hey, remember when we had this conversation, we're going back to that. And so it gives someone a frame of reference to say, oh, no, no, no. We're reverting back to this old behavior of treating each other this
Right.
way or speaking to each other this way. Remember that conversation in Tofino. You know, it
Mm-hmm.
gives someone an anchoring example that
Yeah.
then people are like, oh, and a lot of times they don't even recognize that they've gone
Mm-hmm.
back. But when you point it out and you give them a comparison to say, hey, it's feeling like this again.
Yeah.
Let's not go there. Let's not go back to that like way of operating.
Absolutely. I remember the other thing that I was going to share is that this is something that I toggle with too. So, giving feedback privately versus
Mm,
publicly. And
yes.
sometimes, like when something occurs publicly, where it is a teaching moment for
Yeah.
everyone and a
Yep.
conversation for everyone to be included in,
Yep.
it is courageous, what you
Yes.
did. But I think there is a lot of value in that public
Yes.
conversation of feedback rather than the private one,
Yes. Well,
especially with you because you were not I
I
mean,
wasn't on the
compared to them.
team.
Right.
Yes.
And you were
Yeah.
with your role, but also you weren't their manager.
Nope. Exactly.
Right.
So there, I think about that. I think very intentionally, because I thought about that actually that first night. I thought about pulling the one leader aside in
Mm-hmm.
the morning during breakfast and having a one-on-one conversation. But I intentionally did it in front of the whole group because the whole group experienced what happened the day before. And what I wanted to do was make it clear and make it okay to discuss that and not
Yeah.
shy away from what happened the day before. And also, as a group, agree how they were going to operate going forward, how they were going to
Mm-hmm.
work together going forward, how were they going to treat each other going forward, and collectively agree what type of behavior is okay and what isn't okay. Because if I had had that separately and then even asked that person to like, oh, in your future meetings, discuss this, or oh,
Mm-hmm.
just behave differently, without someone like if all the team has experienced is like that was okay,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be worried about that all the time.
Yeah.
So until you acknowledge in a group setting that that wasn't okay. You know what? That
Mm-hmm.
wasn't our best leadership moment, and we aren't going to let that slide again. Like if
Yeah.
this happens again, we're going to call a pause in the meeting and we're going to solve that.
Mm-hmm. That's so
Yeah.
true. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
now when I facilitate offsites, I really appreciate having the agreements at the beginning of an
Yes.
offsite,
Yes.
where I will be really clear with what my role is as a facilitator of the offsite, where I will
Mm-hmm.
challenge. I might
Yeah.
stop you if you're rambling on and taking too much
Yes.
space. And I find that if I put all of that out there for the team, then
Mm-hmm.
they know, like, oh, okay, yeah, she's stopping me. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's unpacking this. We're challenging. We're having that conversation in real
Yeah.
time with the group right now.
Yes. You know, I really appreciated that practice of community agreements that at Lululemon that we both
Mm-hmm.
experienced. And I'm really curious how many other companies use the practice. And there's probably if you know, if it's not a common practice elsewhere, it would be a good thing to offer. Like I was thinking you should create something around like some example community agreements and how you establish them and how you hold yourselves accountable to them, and offer that out like
Right.
as one of your offerings.
I know it has been such a helpful tool because when I haven't done that
Hmm.
and then I stop a leader
Yeah.
mid-sentence, I'm like,
Yes.
oh, too much, too much.
Hmm.
Bottom line
Yeah.
this, right? Then they're like, whoa, what? And
Yeah.
it's met with, I mean, sometimes it is still met with some, you know, they're a little upset that I'm doing that, but
Yeah.
it's a little easier when I've said, remember those agreements
Yeah.
you agreed to?
I did
I
think
know
you.
those are like before Lululemon too, because I remember through the
Hmm.
Chopra Center as well,
Oh,
especially in
okay.
the silent retreats,
Hmm.
we would have like agreements of like
Mm.
we
You know
honor the
what?
space for people,
I think
right?
I think organizations that have a spiritual base, like a
Mm.
spiritual component, which I would say Lululemon did when we were there. There was like
Mm-hmm.
that angle of the organization, but the other place I've seen it was when I was doing my mindfulness meditation teacher training with like Jack Cornfield, Tara Brach.
Right.
Like that program always had community agreements,
Mm-hmm.
the larger group level and then the smaller group level as well. And I was so happy to see them being used. I was working, I had been working at Lululemon, so I was already familiar with community agreements. And
Yeah.
I remember thinking, oh, they do them too. But now you say the Chopra Center. So I think that those that those organizations that have that foster high self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
like I think they recognize like the benefit of doing something like that. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It has been really beneficial. I use them on my retreats too. And so
Hmm.
during midweek, we'll touch base like, how are we doing here? What do we agree on?
I
I
love
mean,
it.
usually in a retreat environment, there is really isn't a lot of conflict that comes up. I mean,
No.
like amongst others, there's some maybe conflict, internal conflict that's coming
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
that they're there to process and heal through. But yeah, there isn't so much, you know,
Yeah.
the team
Yeah.
dynamic.
Hmm. Yep. Gosh,
Um,
I remember, sorry, this is a total tangent, but
no,
I
let's go there.
mentioned silent retreat and community agreements, but I was thinking about that 7-day retreat I did in Big Bear, silent retreat, and I don't remember community agreements, but I don't know why I'm even bringing this up, but I remember one of the things that I struggled with the most the first like 3 days was listening to other people breathing. it became like fingernails on a chalkboard. I wanted to just ask them to blow their nose or something, like clear the airway somehow because I can hear it so loudly.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that is a pet peeve of mine too, Janelle. Like
No,
if
seriously.
somebody, when I would be teaching regular yoga classes,
Mhm.
and like they're sweating and stuff, and so they obviously need to blow their nose.
Yes.
And I would like get a box of Kleenex and just put it on their mat because I was like, I can't handle this anymore. I just want, I did want to hear breath, but like that ujjayi breath,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't want to hear that constriction,
No,
no
no.
congestion.
Yes to this, no to that.
There's
But
so
I
much
remember
though.
feeling so badly that I was judging them for just breathing, but oh my gosh. It
Isn't
was
that
free.
so funny
Yeah.
though? Like that's the process. First, it's like you
Yes.
get irritated with the sound,
Yeah.
then you feel bad,
Yeah.
you're like, I'm such a terrible person
Yeah.
that this is
Yeah.
annoying me.
Yeah. And then I was like, I wonder if I'm annoying them. Like, I wonder what am I doing right now that's annoying them? And then by the end of it, you like love everybody. You like love that big gruffy guy that had the like really loud breathing. It's a real
Or the
funny process,
snores.
actually.
Oh my gosh. How about the snoring though?
Oh, you
Right?
know what? Yes, there was snoring. There was
Yeah.
snoring.
Usually on a silent retreat when you're
Yeah.
meditating so much, people
Hmm.
slip in and out of
Yeah.
taking a nap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, another thing that I had to work on was like following rules. I'm type of person that wants to follow the rules. And so, for instance, we were doing walking meditation, silent walking, and they did a whole instruction on how you're supposed to do it. It's like super slow, like really mindful. It's like
Yeah.
this.
It's not,
It's
you're not trying to get from point A to point
exactly.
B.
It's supposed to be like 10 paces back and forth, back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But then there would inevitably people just walking around all fast, all over the place, like they're going on a hike for 30 minutes. Like I was like, again, can't say anything, but I would be like, I'd be going and then I'd be like looking at him, like,
You
like
feel my
trying to get
energy.
through to them. Like, you're not doing it correctly.
Oh my
And again, then I question, like, why do I care? Like,
Yeah.
why do I have to follow the rules? Why do I care that someone else isn't following the rules? And is it really a rule? Or can they, anyway, it's the whole process.
Yeah. Well, so much of it is about releasing control,
Mm,
right? So you want to control the
I
group.
did. I wanted to control them. I
Yeah,
really
those
did.
people who are going, who are
I
like,
wanted to hold
getting
them
their
down. I
heart rate
wanted to
up.
write a line on the ground. So like follow this line and don't leave it. This is your line.
We all have that, right? This like need to control. But then, yeah, after a few days, you kind of drop into that and you're like, there's nothing to control. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm letting
I did
go.
refrain. They had a little bulletin board where you could write something about,
Oh, yeah.
So I did refrain from ever putting anything on the bulletin board, but man, it was actually pretty comical, like the first few days of all the things that people were complaining about. They were they, they were saying all the things I was thinking.
Everyone's there to control.
Everyone's there.
I
Oh
know.
man.
They're
Yeah.
fun.
People's
It's fun to be
shoes,
there.
people's breathing, people's everything. But anyway, oh, so
Gosh.
fun. So fun chatting with you, Danielle.
I know. Thanks for this great conversation, Janelle.
I loved it.
I love like everywhere we went.
Yeah. Yeah. Tackling fears, being present. Like that is, though, I really do think that developing the skill to be present or to have a sense of awareness, I
Mm-hmm.
think is one of the key skills to learn in life,
Mm,
really,
yeah.
which makes me think that every organization should be teaching it. The schools should be teaching it as
Mm-hmm.
part of the standard curriculum.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, to unlock like a good life, a healthy life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.